Imagine a city that operated as the central toll booth for an empire. For centuries, Thonis-Heracleion was exactly that, Egypt's mandatory port of entry. It was the Hong Kong of antiquity, a massive customs hub where every incoming ship paid its dues in silver and silk. Scholars assumed the city was nothing more than a myth recorded by Greek historians. That was until the year 2000, when marine archaeologist Franck Goddio found it. The reality of the site today is bleak. Heavy stone buildings pressing down on waterlogged clay caused a process known as soil liquefaction. The ground behaved like a liquid, swallowing the architecture whole. Now the ruins sit suffocating beneath the murky mud of the Bay of Abu Qir. Hauling these fragile, waterlogged artifacts to the surface risks destroying them. But there is a radical alternative. Instead of pulling the ruins up to our world, engineers could build a futuristic, fully submerged metropolis directly over the site. Turning this drowned real estate into a functioning aquatic frontier requires solving three severe oceanic obstacles. Builders have to figure out how to see through the mud, how to stop the ground from sinking, and how to keep humans alive at the bottom of the sea. The immediate barrier to any underwater construction in the Bay of Abu Qir is the water itself. It is dense with suspended silt, severely limiting visibility. This diagram illustrates the solution, a massive filtration barrier pulling in turbid, particulate-filled water. The system strips out the silt, creating a neon-clear environment where the water focuses surface light, making the temple floors 30 feet down perfectly legible. To maintain visibility at night, designers would landscape the seafloor with genetically modified corals and seagrass. These biological light sources cast a soft cyan glow to naturally illuminate the ancient white limestone streets. During the day, this ultra-clarified water introduces a distinct optical phenomenon. Sunlight striking the surface creates shifting patterns of refraction on the ocean floor. When these dancing lights hit the submerged golden monuments, the ancient statues appear to breathe and move in the current. By removing the mud and filtering the light, you bypass the feeling of a static, dead ruin. You give the architecture a dynamic, living atmosphere. But seeing the city is pointless if it keeps sinking. The same geological instability that originally doomed Thonis-Heracleion is still active today. This cutaway shows thousands of tons of stone pressing on Nile silt. With seismic pressure, the ground flows like liquid, dragging the granite down. To stabilize it permanently, geothermic pillars are driven through the silt, anchoring into solid bedrock to level the foundations. Once that bedrock foundation is established, engineers can begin heavy reconstruction. Colossal, 5-meter-tall red granite figures, like Hapi, the god of the Nile flood, can be hoisted from their backs and set upright, acting as sentinels at the harbor entrance once again. This stabilized ground also supports the crowning architectural goal, reconstructing the Great Temple of Amun-Gereb at the center of the grid, complete with towering obelisks capped in highly reflective electrum. Without establishing absolute geological stability first, all of this effort fails. The newly restored gold leaf columns and massive statues would simply be swallowed by the earth a second time. With the water clear and the ground solid, we reach the final challenge. Humans need a safe, functional environment at the bottom of the sea, integrated directly into a site that contains over 60 fragile ancient shipwrecks. The primary structural housing relies on massive, pressure-resistant polymer domes. These non-reflective shells encase entire sections of the city, allowing visitors to walk on dry, ancient sand, while thousands of gallons of seawater hold securely above them. To move between the Grand Harbor and the residential rim, travelers would use a network of transparent glass tunnels. These zero-pressure corridors thread carefully through the archaeological grid, connecting the different districts. Inside the main pressurized enclave, known as the Golden Hub, the air is oxygen-rich, and the ancient world is fully accessible. Visitors can stand inches away from monuments like the Decree of Size, a perfectly polished black diorite slab covered in dense hieroglyphics, outlining the city's complex legal history. These domes and tunnels solve the paradox of underwater habitation. They let modern humans intimately occupy an ancient space, without removing that space from the sea that claimed it. Designing a submerged metropolis is a fascinating engineering exercise, but restoring Thonis-Heracleion carries a much heavier significance. The ancient Egyptians lost their coastal hub to rising tides and geological collapse. Today, dozens of modern coastal cities face that exact same threat. Rebuilding this city underwater is a working proof of concept. It demonstrates that as the oceans rise, we have the capacity to adapt. We do not have to abandon our history to natural disasters. We can build around it. Building here transforms a site of archaeological loss into a practical laboratory. It proves that the technologies required to stay, filtration, stabilization, and atmospheric control, can be integrated into the ocean floor rather than fighting against it. So if you had the chance to visit this rebuilt metropolis, how would you experience it? Would you prefer the safety of a dry glass tunnel, or would you dive into the neon-clear water to touch the temple?